What's up, everyone? Checking this video out. This is the year in wrestling 1995 part 4 in my series of the year in wrestling videos. I'll be talking about every single year up until 2015. So, before I talk about WCW Fall Brawl 95 pay-per-view, I'm going to talk about some news items from 95 and the summer of 95. August 20th, Cactus Jack defeats Terry Funk to win the IWA King of the Death Match tournament in Japan. And it was vicious, violent, hardcore, brutal matches. IWA King of the Death Match tournament. You can see Cactus versus Terry Funk in just violent and vicious, extreme, bloody matches and wars on YouTube. If you type in IWA Cactus Jack versus Terry Funk from 95. And when Cactus won the IWA King of the Death Match, he was also still in ECW full-time. August 29th, in WCW backstage, Big Van Vader and Paul Orndorff are involved in a locker room brawl at CNN Center Stage Theater that resulted in Vader's suspension and eventually his firing from WCW and his dismissal and his exit from WCW. That was August 29th. And Bobby Heenan told a story that he was there, and he said that Paul Orndorff knocked Vader out. I don't know if that's true, but it could be very true, because Paul Orndorff was a really tough man in the 80s and still in 95. So I wouldn't be shocked if Paul Orndorff did knock Big Van Vader out. I just don't know if that's true. So that was some of the news items. And another news item, very, very big news, September 4th. WCW debuts Monday Nitro live from the Mall of America in Minnesota. Top WWF star Lex Luger shocks the wrestling world and shows up on Nitro. He was just at WWF SummerSlam 95 doing a run-in in Diesel versus Mabel. And then Lex Luger, 2 weeks later or a week later, shows up on WCW Monday Nitro. It was a big time shocker. And WCW definitely getting Lex Luger to show up on Nitro fired the first shot at the WWF in the Monday Night Wars. So Lex Luger shows up appearing on Nitro after, and then he claimed, after he showed up, he claims and he wants a shot at Hulk Hogan and the WCW World title. And then Hogan does give Lex Luger a title shot a week later on Nitro. And then the match ends in disqualification when members of the Dungeon of Doom enter the ring. So those are just some news items. One more. September 11th, 95. WCW wins the first head-to-head meeting of Monday Nitro versus Monday Night Raw. Nitro posted a 2.5 rating, and Monday Night Raw posted a 2.2 rating. So Nitro beat Raw by 300,000 viewers. So good for WCW. And they would be on a roll. In 96, they were on a roll. And then when the NWO storyline came to WCW and the Outsiders came in, WCW just got hotter. And more people turned Raw off. Another lawsuit on September 11th, 95. Jesse the Body Ventura, scores a major victory in a U.S. court in Minnesota. So Ventura was awarded $809,958 in a lawsuit against the WWF over his portion. I guess that payment was over his portion of wrestling videotapes that he appeared in doing commentary. September 25th, Ted Turner agrees to sell TBS and all its holdings, including WCW, to Time Warner Incorporated, which would take control in 1996. Now I'm going to talk about the first pay-per-view that I'm going to talk about in part 4 of the Year in Wrestling 95 WCW Fall Brawl, featuring the War Games. First matchup at Fall Brawl was Johnny B. Bad defeating Brian Pillman in 29 minutes and 57 seconds in a match that determined the #1 contender to Sting's U.S. title. Sergeant Craig Pitbull Pittman beat Cobra by submission in 1 minute 20 seconds. Throwaway match. Was very stupid to have on Fall Brawl pay-per-view. Television champion Diamond Dallas Page defeats television champion The Renegade to win the title. Harlem Heat defeats World Tag Team Champions Buckhouse Buck and Dick Slater to win the WCW World Tag Team titles. Arn Anderson took on his very best friend, former Four Horsemen members, Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, their first ever one-on-one matchup on WCW pay-per-view ever. Arn Anderson defeats Ric Flair after Brian Pillman interfered and helped out Arn Anderson. And later on in 95, or it could have been during this match, Brian Pillman was a member of the Four Horsemen. So Brian Pillman interferes, Arn Anderson defeats Ric Flair, the Nature Boy. And that was a very good match between two very good friends in real life. And they put on a great match. Hulk Hogan in the War Games match. Hulk Hogan's team, Hulk Hogan, Sting, Randy Savage, and Lex Luger defeated the Dungeon of Doom, a team of misfits and jobbers. Their characters were awful. Anyways, Hulk Hogan's team defeats the Zodiac, Meng, Kamala, and the Shark in a War Games match that went 18 minutes 45 seconds. And after this match, the Giant would come out and show himself live, get in his War Games cage, jump into the second ring. He was a giant of a man, and he had a lot of athletic ability. He leaped over the top rope like it was nothing. And then he gets in the ring and grabs Hulk Hogan and snaps his neck like he broke Hogan's neck. I even think the Giant picked up Hogan and chokeslammed him. And then Kevin Sullivan was there, and he was laughing, and he was beating on Hogan also. So the Giant revealed himself at Fall Brawl, and he became the newest member of the Dungeon of Doom. Now, I'm going to talk about, that was Fall Brawl 95 from WCW. It happened September 17th, 95. Now I'm going to talk about In Your House, number 3. Took place on September 24th, 95. First match, Savio Vega defeats Waylon Mercy. Waylon Mercy had a great character. I enjoyed it. It was ahead of its time. Waylon Mercy was Dan Spivey. Had a run in the WWF earlier in 1986. He was back in 95 as Waylon Mercy. He reminds me of early type of kind of like Bray Wyatt's character. He reminded me of Bray Wyatt, but Bray Wyatt is much different and he's better at promos than Waylon Mercy was. But Waylon Mercy was ahead of its time. Great character. I enjoyed it. And he had great segments and vignettes for him when Waylon Mercy came into the WWF. He had a lot of great videos before he came in and made his debut. But he loses to Savio Vega on In Your House 3. So the WWF was not going to push him much farther than that, because he disappeared after 95. Waylon Mercy was no more in the WWF. Up next, Psycho Sid defeats Henry Godwinn in a throwaway match that should have been on Superstars. Davey Boy Smith defeats Bam Bam Bigelow. Dean Douglas, which was a god-awful gimmick. And it was like WWF's joke and rib on Shane Douglas, I think. It was a god-awful character. It was never going to get over. Dean Douglas pins Razor Ramon and defeats him. I think to win the Intercontinental Championship. I don't really remember. Or maybe... No, it wasn't for the Intercontinental title. It was just a singles match. Dean Douglas defeats Razor Ramon because Shawn Michaels was still Intercontinental Champion. Bret Hart defeats Jean-Pierre Lafitte, whatever the hell his name was. He was former Quebecer. The hell is his name? I think his name was Pierre. As the Quebecers. He looked like he was dressed like a pirate. It was a god-awful gimmick that they gave Jean-Paul. Or Jean-Pierre. Whatever the fuck his name was. Nobody cared. He looked like a pirate, and it was a ridiculous, stupid-ass gimmick. World main event. After Bret Hart defeated Jean-Pierre, main event was World Champion Diesel and Intercontinental Champion Shawn Michaels defeating World Tag Team Champions Yokozuna and Davey Boy Smith, substituting for Owen Hart when Diesel pinned Owen Hart, who had interfered in the match towards the end. And this match was, I believe, billed as all the gold was on the line. Tag titles and Intercontinental and World title was all on the line. But the match ended in a mess, and Davey Boy was in it. Then Owen Hart came in and got in it and got defeated, and Shawn and Diesel won the tag titles, so they had every single belt in the WWF that the WWF had to offer. But after this pay-per-view, In Your House 3, I believe Diesel and Shawn would get stripped of the tag titles because of the finish of the match. Now I'm going to talk about next pay-per-view from the WWF. In Your House number 4 took place on October 22nd, 95. It's from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Henry Godwinn. Yes, I think this was a pay-per-view match. Or it was on the pre-show, I don't know. Henry Godwinn defeats Psycho Sid, and they had another match at another pay-per-view and nobody cared. Bret Hart defeats Isaac Yankem. This feud should have not been going on and continuing into December. We saw it at SummerSlam. We didn't need to see any more Bret Hart versus Isaac Yankem because the matches were not good, and Isaac Yankem was god-awful as a character. So Bret Hart defeats Isaac Yankem, and I didn't care. Owen Hart and Yokozuna defeat Bam Bam Bigelow and Savio Vega. That was all on the pre-show, I guess. Pay-per-view matches. Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeated Fatu. Fatu was Rikishi later on. He was also the Sultan in 97. World Tag Team Champions, the Smoking Guns, defeat the team of Razor Ramon and the 1-2-3 Kid in a good tag title match. Goldust making his WWF pay-per-view wrestling debut. He left WCW in 95 to go to the WWF. It was big news, and he had an epic, great character. He was playing Goldust, a hell of a character, one of the best ever in the WWE's history and WWF's history. I mean, Goldust is such a great character. I would say he's up there, right up there with The Undertaker. It's that great. So, in 95, Goldust was controversial. He was ahead of its time. And the crowds didn't know what the hell to make of him. A lot of people were uncomfortable by it. And what Goldust would say in his promos and the sexual stuff he would say in his promos to get people uncomfortable. I'm sure a lot of people in 95 were uptight. And a lot of people, I mean, I was at some house shows in 95 and even 97. And people in the crowds would yell at Goldust, faggot, faggot, faggot. And they would scream at him, queer. They would make all kind of homophobic remarks, screaming at Goldust. Everybody knows the guy was not gay. And even if he was, I would have still cheered him. I don't care if someone's gay or not gay. I don't care if they're a nice person. They're fine with me. Let them be. If they want to be happy, let them be happy. They deserve to be happy. They're all humans. They're human beings. They're not aliens. So, anyways, Goldust got a lot of homophobic chants towards him in 95, 96, 97. So what the hell was I saying? But anyways, Goldust makes his pay-per-view wrestling debut. Great character, ahead of its time. And he was getting a big push. He defeats Marty Jannetty. I don't know where Marty Jannetty came from in 95 because he was not around the entire year in the WWF. He just appeared to job to Goldust. On a pay-per-view, it made no sense. But Goldust gets his first win in the WWF. That was awesome. Up next, Yokozuna and Mabel wrestled to a double countout. Pointless match. Went 5 minutes, 17 seconds. Razor Ramon defeated Intercontinental Champion Dean Douglas, who won the title by forfeit earlier from Shawn Michaels earlier in the pay-per-view. So Razor Ramon then defeats Dean Douglas and takes the Intercontinental title from him. Great way to push Dean Douglas, Vince. Great way to push him. Have him lose to Razor Ramon on the same pay-per-view event. Very dumb, and that just pushed Dean Douglas way, way, way down to mid-card level, and that just basically killed his WWF career. I mean, very stupid booking. Have a guy win the Intercontinental title, acting like you're going to give him a push, and then have him lose it in the same night. Very just pointless, odd, dumb booking. Who the hell knows? Maybe the Clique got involved backstage and had told Vince that they think Razor should go over and win the title, and he did. I don't know if the Clique got involved in that match. But somebody got involved because it seems really fishy that Dean Douglas, you would have him win the title from Shawn Michaels by forfeit and then have him job to Razor. Made no sense. But I was happy because I was a Razor Ramon fan. And I'm sure Dean Douglas, when he was in WWF, I'm sure he was not happy. Within 2 months of being there, he wanted out. He wanted to go back to ECW, and I don't blame him. Because WWF treated him like shit, and they killed his career in the WWF. And his wrestling gear did not help. It was like neon blue, baby blue, and it was just god-awful wrestling gear, and the character was god-awful. And, I mean, Dean Douglas had zero chance of getting over in his WWF career because WWF killed him. It killed him, basically. Davey Boy Smith up next. After Razor wins the IC title, Davey Boy Smith with Jim Cornette, his new manager, beats the world champion Diesel by disqualification. When Bret Hart was doing color commentary for the pay-per-view, Bret Hart interfered and attacked Davey Boy Smith, his brother-in-law, in real life. Now I'm going to talk about WCW Halloween Havoc in 1995. And then I'm pretty sure I'll be done talking about Part 4. Halloween Havoc took place December 29th, 1995 from Detroit, Michigan. Pay-per-view matches. Up first, Johnny B. Bad defeated television champion Diamond Dallas Page to win the TV title. It was a pretty good match. I don't remember much of it, but I'm sure it was decent. Randy Savage defeated the Zodiac in 1:30 seconds. Unbelievable. Stupid booking, but I'm glad Randy Savage got the win because there's no way in hell you should have the Zodiac go over Randy Savage. Up next, some Japanese wrestler, Kirasawa, I think that's how you pronounce it, Kirasawa, defeated Road Warrior Hawk in 3 minutes 14 seconds as Colonel Robert Parker held Hawk's legs as Kirasawa was pinning him. Sabu from ECW. Sabu was now working for WCW. I don't know why. It was odd. Very odd to see Sabu in WCW. And he would appear on like 2 or 3 Monday Nitros also in 95. And he appeared at Halloween Havoc 95. Sabu, he probably did it because he's probably just did it to piss off Paul Heyman. I don't know. Or maybe he didn't get paid in ECW, so he decided to go to WCW where he would get paid. Sabu defeats, with his uncle, the Sheik, Sabu defeats Mr. JL in 3 minutes 28 seconds. Mr. JL was Jerry Lynn, former ECW World Champion, former TNA X Division Champion, and Ring of Honor World Champion, Jerry Lynn, and WWF, the Light Heavyweight Champion. So, Mr. JL, he had a mask on. He looked like a Power Ranger type gimmick. He was dressed like a Power Ranger superhero. It was a kind of a lame gimmick for 95, but Jerry Lynn, Mr. JL, was a pretty damn good cruiserweight wrestler for WCW. So Sabu defeats Mr. JL. And later on, a couple years later, they would both be working full-time in ECW again. Jerry Lynn would go to ECW in 98 for the first time, and Sabu went back there right after the beginning of 96. In November to Remember 95, I believe Sabu was back in ECW by November 95. So his WCW run lasted like 1 month, I think. And then he's back in ECW full time in 96. And Jerry Lynn, Mr. JL, would stay in WCW, I think, until the end of '97. And then go to ECW. And put on great matches and become a superstar. Lex Luger defeated Meng by disqualification. Nobody really cared. Ric Flair. This was awesome stuff. Very entertaining match. Ric Flair and Sting teaming up. They did not get along at this time in '95 at Halloween Havoc versus Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman. And Ric Flair and Sting would defeat Arn Anderson and Brian Pillman by disqualification. And then Ric Flair, after Sting was getting beaten on like the entire match, Sting finally tags in Ric Flair for the hot tag. And Ric Flair starts strutting around the ring, runs up to Sting, punches Sting in the face, and turns on his partner Sting. And then Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Brian Pillman all start jumping on Sting and attacking him and beating him down. And they left Sting for like dead. And Horsemen, Ric Flair, Arn Anderson were back together and with Brian Pillman as the Four Horsemen. Arn Anderson and Ric Flair were feuding going into Halloween Havoc '95. They acted like they hated each other. Great heel turn by Ric Flair. And the crowd popped. They loved it. When Ric Flair turned on Sting in this tag match at Halloween Havoc '95. Crowd loved it. Up next, after Lex Luger defeated Meng, he was in another match. And Randy Savage was also in a match earlier. Randy Savage then defeats Lex Luger at Halloween Havoc. The Giant. Before this match, they had a battle of monster trucks. The Giant had a monster truck against Hulk Hogan's monster truck. It was supposed to be on a roof of the building next door of Halloween Havoc. I don't know if it was on a roof or not. And then they did a stupid angle where after the monster truck match, the Giant pulled Hulk Hogan out of his monster truck, start fighting him near the edge of the roof. One of them were going to fall off the roof 50 feet to their death, right? Wrong. Obviously, one of them was not going to fall to their death. It was just a stupid storyline, stupid angle. So the Giant ends up on the edge of the roof, going like this, like he's going to fall backwards off the roof and die and fall to his death. And then Hogan hits him with a right hand, and the Giant falls. And I guess Hogan tried to grab him off the edge, and he couldn't. The Giant fell, and Hogan was in shock. And the commentators were in shock. They didn't know what the hell to say. I guess they showed them on camera, and then they looked in shock, and they were saying, the Giant just fell off the roof. What has happened here? And they just acted in shock. It was stupid. And then you have the main event start, where Hulk Hogan comes out after he's in the red and yellow monster truck. He comes out in all black for some reason, like he was going to a funeral during the main event. Comes out in all black ring gear. And then the Giant, somehow, when the announcer, Michael Bufford, was announcing, here comes the Giant, nobody thought he was going to come out, but he did come out. And then the Giant walks out with not one scratch on his body. They didn't even bother to put special effects makeup on his face or anything. He looked like nothing happened to him. He looked like a man that definitely did not fall off a fucking roof, 50 feet off a roof, or 100 feet, whatever. So the Giant comes out, and then you have the Dungeon of Doom interfere. And you have, I think his name was the Yeti, or he was the Yeti or something. He was dressed as a mummy. The guy was like a giant. He's as big as a giant. I think he was called the Yeti or something like that. But he was dressed as a mummy. I guess he was dressed as a mummy because it was called Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, right, WCW? So he just had to dress the guy as a stupid mummy for the Halloween gimmick pay-per-view. Well, that was ridiculous and just beyond stupid. But WCW did a lot of stupid shit. So they dressed him as a mummy, and Tony Schiavone was freaking out on commentary saying, "This is the biggest man I've ever seen. Who is this? Yeti." And then the Yeti and the Giant had Hogan in a bear hug, and the Yeti puts his arms on top of, in between Hogan, so the Giant and the goddamn mummy were crushing Hogan, and the mummy, whoever the fuck the guy was, I think he would appear in Raven's flock later on. His name was Reese, and I think he was also called the Yeti earlier. Anyways, they were acting like they were crushing and squeezing Hulk Hogan to death in the middle of them. It was beyond stupid. And it was just awful, dumb angle. Should never had the goddamn mummy come out. But I guess they thought it was okay and people would understand a mummy is appearing because it's a Halloween Havoc pay-per-view. I don't get their thinking. Whoever was booking, just having a mummy come out, Halloween Havoc 95 to squeeze Hogan with a Giant was just as bad as the Chamber of Horrors match at Halloween Havoc 91. The mummy was just as bad as the Chamber of Horrors match. And that match was god-awful. So basically, then Jimmy Hart, I believe, turns on Hulk Hogan. He was his manager his entire year and a half WCW run so far. So Jimmy Hart turns on Hulk Hogan, and I believe the Giant, or Jimmy Hart, hit Hulk Hogan with Jimmy Hart's megaphone. So then the Giant pins Hogan 1, 2, 3. The crowd is pretty shocked. Then the Giant becomes and wins the WCW World Heavyweight Championship in his first match, his first pay-per-view match, his wrestling debut. The Giant beats Hulk Hogan. That was pretty shocking and hell of a way to get the Giant over as a monster heel, having him beat Hogan. So that was a good idea for Hogan to put over the Giant in his first match because he was a young guy and he had a lot of athleticism and a lot of potential. So that was the right decision by Hogan to put over the Giant. So that was WCW Halloween Havoc 95. Flair turning on Sting, that was great. And the Giant winning the title was pretty cool. So it was a decent pay-per-view. It wasn't bad, it was just good. So I talked about Fall Brawl. Talked about WWF In Your House 3. I talked about In Your House 4. And I talked about WCW Halloween Havoc 1995. This is it for my Part 4 Year in Wrestling 1995 video, everybody. Hope you enjoyed it. If you watched, thank you for watching. I'll be back with a Part 5 where I talk about Survivor Series and WCW World War III 95, the first World War III pay-per-view, and Starrcade 95. That'll be Part 5 of the Year in Wrestling 1995. This, what you watched, was Part 4 of the Year in Wrestling 1995, everybody. Enjoy Monday Night Raw. If you're watching, I'll be on Twitter, as always, on Monday night. Follow me at TNA WWE Guy and at NXT WWE Guy. Bye for now. Enjoy Monday Night Raw. I hope it's a great show.